What's happening? Thanks for joining me, Matt. I really appreciate your time, man. Um, I guess first thing I wanted to talk about, like you've got like a pretty legendary process happening. You've been releasing a book for every 3 months for how long now?
In August this year, it'll be 10 years since I self-published my first book, I think. So yeah, I started when I was eight. I started self-publishing when I was 18, just almost to just see if it was, if there was going to be any result or if anyone was interested in what I had to write. And that was on like a gap year from uni. So I started studying law and then realized that, this is probably the perfect opportunity to take a gap year. I've been writing fiction since I was like 6 years old, so I'd always been obsessed with that. So yeah, just thought let's put something out there, and I've been getting really into like adult thrillers, like the Jack Reacher series, and in my teenage years, I found out about that whole genre and got obsessed with it. So yeah, wrote my own spin on it, and then yeah, put it out at 18, and the first one did well enough that it's kind of been my job ever since. So I've been, yeah, full-time writer for nearly a decade.
Wow. What was the platform you initially started out on?
Amazon. So so it was
Sorry, I
Kindle
didn't.
Direct, yeah, Kindle Direct Publishing. So my self-publishing has always been on just exclusive to Kindle, basically.
Yep.
Because yeah, I just want to go where the readers are, basically. And I tried to get a book traditionally published when I was in my teenage years. I'd written like a young adult novel when I was 15 or 16. I'd heard that the author of Aragon, Christopher Paolini, was like 16 when he first published
Mm.
that. So that was kind of the goal. And then, yeah, obviously I was 16, so didn't hear back from any agents or anything. So that's what
Sure.
kind of turned me to self-publishing in the first place.
And how did you promote it? What was the sort of like strategy there when you first started out with them?
So I emailed basically every self-published author that I could find and just said, "Hey, I'm 18. I'm trying to get into this. Do you have any advice or anything like that?" So yeah, I got a bunch of marketing tips basically, which was so I had always planned to, like I went into it wanting to for it to sell basically. So I was going in with like a bit of a commercial mindset on top of the creative stuff that I've always had. So yeah, I just followed a bunch of stuff that they taught me basically, which was to price the first book on the Kindle at 99 cents. So it's just you just put it as cheap as you possibly can, because when no one knows who you are, like you just need to find out whether anyone's actually interested in what you've got to write. So that's what I did. So because I was obviously I knew I was quite young. So yeah, just put the first one up as cheap as possible, and then slowly built up a mailing list after that. So basically, people would get the ebook, and if they enjoyed it, they'd just click a little link and give their email address, and then I would just email every time I had a new book out. So each time I was writing and releasing a book, there'd be a little bit more people on the mailing list each time. And so then the launches just kind of grew from there.
Cool. How did you settle into that sort of like it's about quarterly schedule, isn't it?
Yeah,
Roughly.
it's about that. I just that wasn't like that wasn't a plan to do a certain number of books a year. That's just kind of what works best for my daily routine. I guess like I'm quite I don't know. I read Stephen King's On Writing when I was like 14, and just the sort of the regimented nature that he brought to it, which was not to the actual work itself, not to like the plot was he never made the plot or the characters formulaic. It was just like hit a certain word count every day. So I guess I kind
Yeah.
of took that to heart. So yeah, ever since all the way back then, I've just always had it's either 2,000 words a day, 1,500 words a day, sometimes just 1,000 words a day. But I kind of set the goal, and then I don't worry about how much time it's going to take to hit that. Because I feel like I've done before, like when I set a thing that's like I'm going to write for an hour or write for 2 hours, like half that time I'll just spend not right, just so you kind of procrastinate as the length of what the hour you've set for yourself. So yeah, I just have the kind of rigid word count each day, and then just try to hit that.
It's impressive. Yeah. I mean, because Stephen King's ritual sort of like he gets up and he sort of he gets into it in the morning, doesn't he? And then he's like he's sort of done by lunchtime and
Yeah, yeah. I've
then
always, I guess
repeat.
I've never had like a sort of mystique attitude towards writing. Like all my writing heroes when I was younger pretty much all had the same advice, which was just sit down and just make yourself do it. And I think Frank Herbert, who wrote June, he has this amazing quote. I can't remember it word for word, but it was basically like he said that the words that he forces himself to write and the words that he writes when he's like creatively inspired, when he goes back and looks at both of them, he can't tell any difference between them. So
Yeah.
it's not like, you know, it's just you feel better when the words are rushing in, and you feel better while you're writing. And I've had the exact same experience. Like
Yep.
when I just make myself do it, and then I look at, you know, words I wrote in like a creative frenzy. I'm like, oh, my prose is the same. I'm not magically better just because I'm excited about it. So yeah, I guess that's probably a bit more of a rigid mindset than maybe most creatives have. But I don't know. I've always felt it can always go hand in hand.
Sure. Yeah. When did you come up with the character of Logan Booth?
So that was probably like 4 years ago now. It was about 2023,
Okay.
and so I'd been self-publishing for 7 or 8 years. And I was thinking about starting a new series, and so I had the initial spark of the idea was because I think thrillers are sort of getting more like, especially like vigilante sort of action thrillers, they're getting a bit more out of touch over the last 5 or 10 years, because it's usually, you know, agents doing stuff for Queen and Country, and um, you know, when it's yeah, it's, I don't know, it's sort of like we're slowly understanding that the world's a bit more nuanced than just like good country, bad country. So that was the initial spark, and I wanted a sort of vigilante assassin character who doesn't really believe in anything that like big nations stand for, any of them. And so he's this kind of like individualist. He has this sort of individualist philosophy, and he feels like he's going around and cleaning up after, you know, he's taking care of the people that the government kind of ignores out of indifference. And then at the tail end of his career, he finds out that he was just being manipulated by the CIA the entire time,
Right.
and that he was a government hitman basically without even realizing. So that was because I write sort of action thrillers, but they're a little bit more philosophical than your usual action thriller. So I love the sparks for my new series are always kind of like some kind of existential crisis or something like that. So yeah, that was the initial idea, and so I wrote the first 60 pages, and then it just felt a bit different to what I'd self-published before. And I felt like I'd really kind of found my own voice and sort of come into my own, I don't know, unique writing style or whatever. And so, yeah, so then I just sat on those pages and then decided I didn't want to self-publish them. And then, yeah, eventually, I think the next year sent them to a literary agent here in Australia, and just said, "What do you think of this?" And he really liked them, and so then he went and took it to publishers, and yeah, that was how my first kind of traditional publishing deal came about.
And how are you finding the change from independent to traditional? Like, what's the sort of pros and cons of that for you in terms of, do you have a sort of understanding that you'll be releasing things outside of that independently while you've got books coming out through the publishers?
Yeah, so the way we did it was that so Simon and Schuster Australia bought the Forsaken, which is the first Logan Booth book. That's what my agent that was the book that my agent first started representing me with. And then so I didn't self-publish anything in the build up to that release, because there was this kind of whole new world where it's like you've got a publisher actually working for you. I didn't have to do a lot of the things myself anymore, which was great. And then, so that traditional publishing is obviously one release a year. So it was a 3 book deal with Simon and Schuster. So the second one is about to come out at the end of June, June 30th.
It's
So
the Damned, yeah?
Damned, yeah. So that's the sequel to The Forsaken, which came
Right.
out last year.
Yep.
And then, yeah, so The Forsaken launched, everyone was happy. And then I was kind of sitting around and going, I I wasn't doing that writing routine just because I felt like I had to. Like I realized, oh, that I actually really want to do that, and I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel just better when I'm writing every day. So went to them and said, hey, do you mind if I self-publish like my old series? Like I'm not starting anything new, like continuing a series in between the traditional publishing releases. And they were happy with it. And I've found Simon and Schuster are really like, they understand that, because I think it would have been, the old mindset would have been, oh, well, I'm taking sales away from maybe the traditional published books if I'm putting out all this stuff. But that, from what I've found from self-publishing, it's almost the opposite, because it's like, if I'm consistently releasing, it keeps my name out there. People are sort of aware of me constantly, and then that kind of, it's like the rising tide lifts all
Yep.
ships. So then there's more visibility on the traditional stuff. So that's what I said to them, and they fully agreed. So yeah, it was I found, I guess, a nice balance between the two.
Yeah, that's must be really yeah, it's satisfying to be able to like continue to sort of push your other work out as well while you're sort of pushing the publishers' releases as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's different pros to each. Like the self publishing, obviously. I don't know. I like the feeling of like being responsible for the cover and doing the blurbs myself, and there's like I guess a pride in that, of like, it feels like I'm doing it on my own. And then there's also the traditional side of things, which is like, it's been awesome to like actually finally collaborate with like, their entire team of people who are doing things that I could never do myself. So, yeah.
It'd be nice to have a social media team and all that sort of
I know.
pushing things out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm still doing all the social media, all my social media stuff.
Yeah.
I actually didn't have an author social media at all until the
Oh,
traditional
right.
publishing stuff came about. Because yeah, I was in an interesting. There's an interesting thing with thrillers where it's like, I think maybe it's the demographic is much older who reads thrillers, but it almost barely matters if you're promoting it on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. So yeah, my whole self-publishing career was just like built on basically just the mailing list. So it was just, and then sales on Amazon basically.
Right.
So yeah, that was promoting myself was new to me as well when I started traditionally publishing.
So the algorithm does work when it comes to like selling thrillers to people on Amazon.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, that's great. I am wondering, I haven't read The Forsaken, but is Logan Booth Australian?
No, he's American. So
He's American?
I've only ever written American characters because
Okay.
I think maybe I'd always seen what Lee Child had done with Jack Reacher, because
Yep.
Lee Child's British. And so, but then he was obsessed with American thrillers. And yeah, when I first started, I just think like America was a much more sort of wild westy and like interesting arena to I don't know, to explore thrillers in. But yeah, so all my characters so far have been American,
Okay.
but I am keen to do an actual Australian thriller, probably after this series. Actually,
You think you'll bring him over, or will it be in a different sort of world?
no, it'll be like, I want to do like an actual like Australian,
Okay.
kind of like a Wake in Fright kind of thing, like a
Oh, yeah.
like a sort of dark, intense thriller. Yeah, I feel like that'd be a cool way to sort of kick off the Australian side of things.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to see what Australian readers will sort of lock onto in terms of the Australian voice when you put it out there
Yeah,
in that market. Like it's always a bit of an experiment, isn't it, to see what people actually how they react to
yeah,
hearing
yeah,
their voice.
exactly. Because, well, I mean, The Forsaken. So yeah, it's American character set in New York, all American characters. But yeah, I don't know. Australia had a bunch of people email me, and really like just Australian readers who usually just read Australian stuff and gave it a go, and really enjoyed it. So I don't know if that's like, if the characters are Australian at heart, and because that's just kind of the way I write them. I don't know, but it might maybe like a sort of just get on with it mindset, or I don't know. I don't know.
We talked about. I just talked to Justin on the podcast about the book, and I was just saying to him that like I can sort of envision my Logan Booth for the adaptation would be Jacob Elordi on about 500 steroid cycles.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
so actually, I wrote. So I always write like my characters with actors in mind because
mhm.
film and television has always kind of influenced
Yep.
everything that I'm writing as well. Like, I remember when I was like 14, I saw Prisoners, which is the Denis
Yep.
Villeneuve movie with Hugh Jackman, and like that. And I was young enough that I was like, oh, that's what a thriller can be, that grimy and like intense, and I'm captivated by it. And then True Detective season one with Matthew McConaughey
Yep.
really influenced The Forsaken because I realized, oh, you can have this kind of like existential nihilist philosophy in wrapped up in a thriller, and it actually works. So that's kind of what The Forsaken is, kind of a version of that. But yeah, so I imagined Chris Hemsworth as Logan
Yep.
because I think he has like tremendous acting chops and is sort of, it's usually either Thor or something else, but it's like he's given like really nuanced great performances.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I was envisioning him as I wrote Logan as this kind of like broken, crumbling man. And yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. Who do you have in mind for the president in The Damned?
So it's Jacinta Murphy. So probably because she's in The Forsaken as well over the phone, and then at the very end, it's revealed that she was the president, and because she's kind of the one ordering people around in The
Yep.
Forsaken, and then but it's like unclear who she actually is. I'm not sure. I haven't thought enough about that. But so Alice is the second
Yep.
character who's like the young woman Logan meets, which is not a romance. I just wanted it to be like sort of platonic, two people who are broken in their own ways and they don't know how to fix themselves, but they can help each other. It's like they
There's
know.
definitely a patriarchal sort of relationship there. Like,
Yeah,
he's
no, no, not. I actually kind of wanted to do the
no.
exact opposite of that
Okay.
because, yeah, no, it's not. It's in The Forsaken. It's like I wanted Alice to be like I wanted Logan to need Alice more than Alice needs Logan.
Okay.
And so I sort of that was kind of the core of the whole thing. And so yeah, so I always imagined Kaylee Spaney, who played Priscilla, and she was in
Mhm.
Alien Romulus. I always envisioned that as the
Yep.
actor and actress.
So have you got like a sort of a map for how the Logan Booth books are going to play out? Is there like is there like the vision board of how things are going to go for the next 5 books, 10 books? What's the
Uh,
plan?
no, well, not really. I know. Well, I'm writing the third book at the moment. So the second one kind of sets up. I don't want to spoil it, but it
Sure.
leads into this. There's going to be sort of a crazy, explosive third book, and so I kind of write a lot of what I do in like 3 book arcs because it kind of follows the same sort of, yeah, I don't know, peaks and valleys
Mhm.
trajectory or something. So yeah, I've got the third one mapped out. I know where that's going to end, and then if I continue the series, it'll probably go into like another 3 book arc
Okay.
yeah.
So you're globetrotting a lot
Yeah.
uh, in the novels, and what's the research process like with that? Have you done a fair bit of a travel to check places out, or is it a sort of
I've traveled to, well, I mean, I've traveled a lot, but I don't specifically travel to the exact places I set my books. But, I mean, I did. I mean, I've been to New York. I've been to, but it's not really research trips. Like I feel like I write grimy enough that I couldn't even get into the places where I want to, where I'd want to. So
yeah,
like I
don't
watch,
get
I
kidnapped
watch,
or anything? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm not going to go into the organized crime kind of thing and
Yeah.
ask for an interview. So I watch Vice documentaries. I watch there's endless media out there about the subjects that I want to write about, and I kind of honed that over my self publishing because I've done, I think, 35 novels self published, and each is basically in a different country or area of a
Mhm.
country. So yeah, I mean, I've set books in Bhutan, French Guiana, like places that I almost didn't know existed before I started
Sure.
writing the book. But yeah, I love like like singular ideas that then motivate me to write a novel. So one self-published one that I did was like I started reading about like narco submarines, which are basically homemade submarines, which I didn't even know was possible, that the cartels use to kind of smuggle drugs internationally. And it's this enormous operation, and it's yeah. I just went down that rabbit hole, and then wherever those like Vice documentaries and long form articles and all that, wherever that leads me, that's when I start kind of fleshing out the
Right.
locations and things like that.
I just had a vision. I don't know if you've seen it, like the 1983 James Bond movie Octopussy with the crocodile submarine. Um,
I haven't actually seen it. That's
no,
one of the ones I've missed. But yeah, I
yeah,
can. I tried. I'm guessing I've tried to make it a little bit more
a
realistic.
bit cooler than that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you mentioned like Logan sort of he is this sort of operates outside of governments and is a bit more of a vigilante sort of character who's sort of taking out people who deserve to be taken out. How do how do you respond to world events at the moment, and how do you apply those to the books? Would he potentially be quite happy to sort of team up with like the Iranian Guard if there was a mission that was, within his value set, or would there be any limitations on
Uh,
things like that?
no, that wouldn't. No, that wouldn't work because that's still a nation basically. So it's like
Yeah.
he thinks that his philosophy on it. I modeled it a lot off like Henry David Thoreau and the old kind of like 1800s, largely American philosophers actually. But yeah, I think that he kind of thought that he was working for this completely independent vigilante force of just almost like an anonymous kind of like Anonymous, the hacker web group, who are outside of all, because he basically just believes that all large organizations inevitably revert to corruption, and
Yeah.
it's just kind of it just entrenches throughout it. And so no, so he thought he was completely independent from world, because I mean world events are just kind of like, there's always some insanity going on in the news. But he kind of operates outside of that, and just like he is anonymous kind of group goes and finds targets for him, and then his handler, who is called Thoreau,
Mhm.
nicknamed Thoreau. So he gets his jobs from him, and he has this references this Thoreau essay called Civil Disobedience, which is where like
Okay.
it's just to break an unjust law or whatever. So that's the justification for his crime, or his crimes, I guess. And yeah, that's basically his mo.
That's his philosophy. Yeah, cool. Um, I guess we've talked about it a little bit, but like, yeah, your inspirations and your, what other authors that like have sort of driven you into, to what you're doing at the moment. Like, you've mentioned Lee Childs and Stephen King.
Yeah.
What other sort of, what were you reading when you were growing up?
So the crime author that's influenced me the most is Don Winslow. He's a American, almost no, not noir, but like he does sort of these epic, sweeping 800-page novels. And he has a trilogy called the Cartel Trilogy, which is about America's war on drugs and the futility of it, and the effect that that's had on the Mexican people. And yeah, those three books like basically changed, they made me realize like, oh, you can do that with a thriller. It can be that, you can prod that deeply. And yeah, so he's my, and the way that he writes is like, I just can't understand how he's that good. Like it's almost like his prose knows exactly what to include and what to leave out. Which is like, I feel like is a pretty rare, like you can over describe it and under describe so easily, and he just sort of nails the middle line every time. So I've transcribed a few of his books, which is where I just typed them out word for word.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I heard that like Hunter S. Thompson did that with The Great
Yep.
Gatsby. So yeah, just to try to teach myself like the flow, like I don't know, subconsciously, like the way that his writing flows. So he's my favorite author of all time, and then currently Jordan Harper is like a bit of a lesser known author. Him and S.A. Cosby. A few people have now
Okay.
heard more of
Yep.
S.A. Cosby. But yeah, him and Jordan Harper are like the two best noir authors writing today, I think. So yeah, those are kind of my main influences.
Yeah. Nice. And do you write to music? I know it's a hack question, but like to get in the zone, is there anything you crank up
Um,
soundtrack wise or?
I had, yeah. So I used to for about a year straight. I listened to like the Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack just on repeats.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or the Mission Impossible Fallout. That was another one that's got a really good soundtrack. Um, the Social Network actually works really well because it's this kind of like electronic synthy thing. But no, I mean I've got a little app called Brain FM, which I don't know if it scientifically actually is real, but apparently it's, you know, you put headphones on and it's binaural beats and it helps you kind of get in the zone and focus.
Right.
So I just use that, but yeah, I do love soundtracks.
Yeah, interesting. So when's the book coming out?
June 30th, The Damned
June
is.
30. And are you on tour for it at all? Are you doing a little bounce around to some bookshops to do some launches or?
Yeah, yeah. So I've got a Melbourne launch and then I'll have a Sydney launch as well. So that'll be good. I'll do like a few days up in Sydney, going all around bookstores, but it won't be as big. Last year for the Forsaken, I went to like Perth, Adelaide. Where else did I go? Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. So basically the entire Australian
Yeah, great.
mainland, and that was good. Like it was surreal to see my book in stores and everything. But as much as I'm rambling now, like I am actually quite introverted, so it was a bit draining to. I think I did like 100 bookstores or something like that. I just popped in to sign their supply.
So
So yeah,
did
I'll do that again, but probably not as extensively.
so did you get to meet some of the audience while you're out there?
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So I had like I think three different events in Melbourne last year, and then two events up in one event up in Sydney. Um, yeah, it was, and obviously the first time I've ever done anything like that. I've just been
Yeah.
like writing and releasing and online basically
Yeah.
before traditional publishing. So yeah, it was surreal. It was like a whole side of things that I'd never experienced.
Any surprises in who was reading your books?
Not really, because I've always known that it's because it's, you know, retire. It's usually retirees who is the main sort of thriller demographic. Um, yeah, no real
Okay.
surprises, but it was just interesting to see because yeah, self publishing, like 80% of my audience is the
Yeah.
US, I think, and then like 10% UK, 10% Australia. Um, so yeah, it was just cool to meet Australian readers. It was great.
Okay. So where can we find you online? And obviously the book's going to be major bookshops, Amazon, all those sorts of outlets.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. It should be. I'm guessing it'll be kind of just, I don't know, everywhere available that you can get books, hopefully. And online to find me, probably like my Instagram is the thing that I probably use the most in
Yep.
terms of social media. I've got, so just that's just Matt Rogers author. I actually did because like I said, I had no social media before
Yep.
the traditional publishing stuff. So I did like a Instagram reel series where I just made a little video every day, showing like my process of sort of creating a book from start to finish. And I go into like Don Winslow and like my influences and tips and tricks I've found. And so yeah, that's probably the most interesting
Good
thing.
place.
And yeah, otherwise that's about it.
It's amazing, man. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope it all goes really well.
No problem. No, thanks for having me. It's good chat.